morning, everybody. Jim Feist, Hank Goldberg in Las Vegas, and we're so excited. We're going to go back and watch that game from last night. It was so exciting.
Which quarter do you want to watch?
The first 2 minutes, and then I turn it off.
I'll tell you something. I'm going to sue Rosen for taking my name. He's calling himself the Hebrew Hammer.
Oh, boy.
And, so far, he's pretty much of a flop. You know, they keep talking about what a great thrower really is. His first two throws were pathetic. You know, both of them picked off. And then he fumbled. You see the way he was carrying the ball when he fumbled?
Yeah.
He had the ball in one hand and held it out, just waiting for somebody to punch it out of there. He doesn't have the basics down. And he, you know, here's a guy who came out early and was not ready to play in the NFL, and they throw him out there. I mean, they did sign another quarterback who was supposed to be the stopgap between him and when Rosen was ready, and they throw him out there, and they throw Rosen out there early, and they scored one touchdown a week for 6 out of the 7 games they played, and they're in terrible shape. And defensively, there were guys running wide open all over the field, but they're keeping the defensive coach.
Yeah.
How about the general manager? I mean, they've got players on that team. They're just not playing.
Yeah, they probably lost a lot of, the spirit of the league. You know, they know where they are. They're the worst team in football, et cetera, et cetera. They read that stuff. It's the haves and the have-nots in the NFL. We've got a high-scoring league. Points are up everywhere, and there's a team that can't score. They have, they're going to find somebody to throw under the bus, and this time it was the offensive coordinator. Who knows what it'll be next week?
Well, they just aren't playing, and they don't show up, and they get blown out every week, and they lose. They lose to bad teams. I mean, here's a team that came in there that hadn't won on the road in 12 games. Came in there and rang up all those points against them.
Yeah.
And the big joke is they're saying, well, our coach is breathing a sigh of relief. He saved his job. Guarantee you Vance Joseph didn't save his job last night. I'll tell you how bad the media is that covers this league. In Miami, remember I told you the other day that they should launch an investigation into how Adam Gase covered up the Tannehill injury and didn't release it until Friday. And the rule states very clearly that when you're a quarterback or anybody else, and this is practice, you're supposed to list it on your report every day. He didn't practice all week last week, and yet they didn't release him on the injury report until Friday. Now, he didn't practice all week. The question in Miami right now is, where was the local press on that story? They never even asked anything about Tannehill and why he wasn't practicing and what was up with him. Nobody wrote anything about it in the local newspaper.
That is really strange because the talk on every team is the quarterback, and you take a whole week, no practice, and never ask a question about him? That's crazy.
And you know what? I got a call from a guy who was the PR director when I covered the team, and he said, that would never have happened if you were still covering our team because you would have been all over that. You would have been asking questions, and if Shula didn't answer the question, you would have gone to the assistant coaches. You had your sources. These guys who are covering the team right now don't have a clue.
Well, if the league has the balls to fine them for doing that, the head coach I'm talking about, maybe the other coaches will get the message.
Well, the other coaches aren't the issue. The head coach is the issue.
I meant
the assistant coaches aren't the ones who do the injury report.
Usually the buck falls, it falls on the head coach. It's one point or another.
Well, it has to. He's responsible.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So the other head coaches would see they can't do that kind of stuff for whatever reason.
Yeah,
it
well,
was
he's
done.
going to get a fine.
Well, that's what I would like to see. That's good. That's good. Well, we got a big card going on. We got a big baseball game. Boston Red Sox. Congratulations on that. You had Boston to win, and now they go to the World Series, and they're gonna pick up the winner of the Milwaukee L.A. Dodgers series, and they're going.
I got to tell you something. They could sweep either one of those two teams.
Well, I'll tell you what. I agree with you now. If Price can pitch like that, and then you add him to the rest of that staff with a quality start, yeah, they could sweep. They could sweep anybody if he pitches
Well, they
like
can
that.
hit everybody. They can hit anybody right now.
Yep.
I mean, look at what they did with Houston's ace yesterday.
Yeah, this is they win 108 games, right, for the year, and they just beat two teams that both won 100 or more games. So that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. And the National League doesn't look like they'll be able to stand up to them.
Well, look at what they've got going. They've got a great starting pitching rotation. They've got a very strong bullpen. They've got the best defensive outfield in baseball. They all have strong arms, and they can all catch anything that's hit anywhere in the anywhere in the outfield. And they hit and they can hit up and down the lineup.
Yeah, this is
They've got a deep hitting team. They don't have a weakness.
Well, you know, the one weakness a lot of people thought they had was Price, who has been terrible in postseason, but yesterday he pitched an absolutely marvelous game. So they no longer even have that weakness.
Nine guys in 6 innings.
I know. Yeah. Awesome. Well, good game today. Dodgers against the Brewers. That should be a good game. Two good matchup. Two lefties. Should be a very good game. See if Milwaukee can extend that series. We got Boston Reds. Speaking of another Boston team, the Celtics going up to Toronto to play the Raptors, and two teams with new talent. Probably the two best teams in the East, and that looks to be a pretty good game. Although it's early in the season, nobody's rounded into shape yet, but that's a marquee game.
You're talking about that game when you got Houston playing the Lakers? That's the marquee game this weekend in the NBA.
Well, as far as quality, the Lakers are not that good. They got LeBron, but they're still not a great team. I mean, last night they couldn't shoot. They couldn't hit the water from a boat. But you know, LeBron is LeBron. He's the best player, but they have a lot of things to do out there in LA to make them competitive. But look how bad the Houston Rockets played in their first game. They got smoked. So, interesting.
I'm not worried about the Houston Rockets.
You know, a lot of people think that they added Carmelo Anthony, and now they're worse than they were without him. I don't know. He just hasn't brought any championships to any place he's ever played.
Well, now he's a guy coming off the bench. I'd like to have Carmelo coming off the bench.
Well, let's see how he does. It's an experiment. He's finally agreed to coming off the bench. They tried to do that in Oklahoma at the Thunder, and he didn't want to do that. But interesting. Of course, we've got a lot of football games. We've got some college football tonight. Tomorrow, of course, we've got a big card. And, of course, we got another game in London this week. The Chargers go against the Titans. Got to check the weather on that game to see if there's any weather conditions over there. You know, London.
I already checked it. It's in the 60s and no rain.
Good. London has a way of getting a little damp once in a while.
No, it's not damp this week.
I got stuck in some rainstorms over there a few times. But anything on the card that you want to focus on, talk about? Any issues?
Well, there's some good college games this weekend. I'll tell you an interesting game is Clemson and North Carolina State. Nobody's paid much attention to North Carolina State, but they're unbeaten, and they're ranked in the top 25. That could be an interesting game. Michigan State. Michigan State. Michigan kids can't seem to beat Michigan State. We'll see what happens this year. That's a big game in the Big Ten, and there's a few good games this weekend. Last night we had Stanford over Arizona State. That Stanford quarterback is pretty good.
Yes, he is.
Well, this Oklahoma TCU is a pretty good matchup, and Memphis, Missouri should be a high-scoring game. Auburn, Mississippi is a good game. LSU, Mississippi State. And Utah, USC. There's a lot of good matchups this week in college football. And then there's the NFL.
Now we got Kansas City
Chargers are playing the Chargers are playing Tennessee. Tennessee cut their slot receiver, and the Rams picked them right up because they've got injuries at the receiver position, and he should fit right in with the Rams. And the Rams are at San Francisco. We'll see how good San Francisco is now after they looked so good against Green Bay last week.
I tell you,
Carolina.
I like the way Beathard played last week. I see a lot of progress with him.
That's because he's made a lot of progress, and the coaches like him a lot. He's a tough kid, and he can throw the ball. He's got a good, strong arm. San Francisco's got a lot of good young defensive players, too. Dallas, Washington's an interesting game. There are games here where you have teams that habitually lose to other teams. Dallas has beaten Washington 4 straight times, including recent trips to Washington. And the question is, can Washington, which has a good defense right now, and Alex Smith needs to improve his play a little bit, but Dallas has had problems with mobile quarterbacks, and Alex Smith can be mobile. And then there's New Orleans and Baltimore. This is the only team that Drew Brees hasn't beaten. He's 0 for 4 against Baltimore in his career. I mean, he's even beaten his own team when he was with the Chargers. He beat New Orleans. So he's beaten every team in the league now except for Baltimore. And Baltimore's defense right now is probably as good as any defense in the league. And, last week they generated 11 sacks. And New Orleans at times has trouble protecting Brees. So that's going to be a very interesting game to see how that goes.
They're two really good football teams, one AFC, one NFC. They are two really good football teams that can go a long way, not only in the regular season, but in the postseason. They're quality quarterbacks, quality coaching, everything's there. That's a great game. Of course, and there's another big game this weekend too. Well, there's not several, but the Bengals facing the Chiefs after both of them came off tough losses last week.
Yeah, well, it was a tough loss for the Chiefs, but they scored 40 points, 4 touchdowns in the second half against the Patriots. I think the Patriots have a lot to worry about this week, going up against Chicago's defense. Talk about tough losses. Chicago just really faded against Miami in a poorly coached performance by them. And New England going on the road after a very tough game against Kansas City. So a lot of people think that Chicago is going to beat New England, and New England is a favorite on the road. They think that Chicago's defense is going to shut New England down.
That's hard to do.
We'll see.
That's
Well,
hard.
it's hard to do, except for if you look at the teams that New England has beaten this year. They all have bad defenses.
Yeah, they're going to get a lot of.
They lost early in the season to a couple of teams that are good defensively. Jacksonville and who was the other team? Whoever it was.
Well, they lost to Detroit.
Yeah.
Speaking
on the road.
Speaking of Detroit, last week the Bears went down to Miami, and of course they ran into the heat down there, which was over 100-degree heat index on the field. Khalil Mack didn't do much in that game, and fatigue supposedly had.
He got hurt, by the way. The reason he didn't do much was because he got hurt. I wondered why he wasn't in the game at the end, and he's not a sure thing this week.
Without him, the Bears might have a little bit of problem. That would be a big loss for their defense. You don't put pressure on Brady, you're gonna have problems. But getting back to my point about the Lions, a northern team plays in the Dome, heading down to Miami. They've got the same heat issue down there that could be
Not this week.
Not this week?
It's not going to be. No, it's going to be in the low 80s.
Well, that won't affect them as much, that's for sure. Anyway, well, if Mack doesn't play for the Bears or not as effective, that sure doesn't make that sure makes it easier for Brady to stand in there and pick them apart.
Well, he says he's going to play. So, but he couldn't finish last week, and I thought it was just the heat that got him. But he was injured at some point during the game, and he never got back in the second half.
What was the injury?
It was abdominal, I think, some kind of an abdominal or a hip or abdominal thing.
Wow. I'll have to get digging down into that a little bit, find out a little bit more. How many weeks do we have to the Breeders' Cup?
2 weeks from tomorrow.
Good. That's exciting. Anything exciting on your card this week? You got some big plays that.
Yeah, well, I like the card this week, and I think this is the week that teams start to separate themselves a little bit. And the Chargers right now are in pretty good shape. Going over to play Tennessee. Tennessee's in horrible shape. And all the sacks they gave up last week. Mariota is not playing very well. And, the Chargers have lost 2 games this year. The 2 losses were to the Rams and Kansas City, which doesn't look so bad all of a sudden. But Phillip Rivers, in his last 8 games, has thrown 19 touchdown passes and only 3 interceptions. And he's playing as well as he ever has. And he's got a player coming out of the backfield now who's become a very huge addition to his passing game.
Absolutely.
And, he's got a lot of wide receivers to throw to. Good choice of options for him. And so he's really on his game right now. The Chargers are charging. And they are not in the toughest part of their schedule right now. But the only thing that worries me is the game is at 2:30 over there, which is 4:30 in the morning where they've come from. And that's always a little bit of a difficulty. But that shouldn't bother them against Tennessee the way Tennessee's going right now. It's a mismatch. The other teams that are, starting to emerge, Philadelphia right now They're getting Sproles back. The top wide receiver is healthy now. And Carolina last week, McCaffrey had carried the ball 6 times. Cam was involved in every play but 7 in the game. And North Turner was supposed to straighten that out, but apparently nothing sinks in with Cam.
Really, he doesn't follow directions. Is that what you're saying?
No. And I mean, that was the problem that Mike Shula had with him. He doesn't listen to anything.
Well, obviously, I mean, not using McCaffrey more than 6 times is crazy. That's insane. God, that guy's a mess. He's a monster. Great player, and I mean, they're basically put together. They're a decent team. They should not fade like that. So they might just bounce back. I know Philadelphia looked very good against the Giants, and they really did. The only question mark is they're playing the Giants. You have to wonder if that was the case, that they were sharp or they just ran up against the Giants. Speaking of which, they got to go play Atlanta in Atlanta, and Atlanta's been struggling quite mightily as well.
Well, before we get off the subject of Philadelphia, they're at home. The quarterback is shaking off the rust now. It took him a couple of games to do that. Jeffrey is now back for the second week, so he should be in pretty good shape. Philadelphia has injuries among their running backs, but they've got a couple of guys who have come through for them, Clement and Smallwood, who played very well last week. So, their offense is on the beam, and their defense is their defense. It's very good. Their record at home under Peterson is 17-4. I think that's a lot, tall order for Carolina, whose secondary, by the way, is not up to par.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. Coming off the loss, they're back on the road again. Philadelphia's rested. They look sharp. It is a tough spot, a very tough spot. There's everybody and their brother is going to be on Philadelphia, which is, that's the way it looks right now. 5-point favorite, by the way, which isn't that much, but 44.5 is the total. It's a tough spot for Carolina and Philadelphia. If they're playing like they can play, and we all know how they can play, that'll be a tough game.
Cincinnati, can they score enough on Kansas City's defense? Cincinnati, that game I think got sent into prime time on Sunday.
Yeah, that was flexed.
So the question is Dalton up to playing in prime time? All his bad games are in prime time. Yeah. But the fact that he's going up against the Kansas City defense might overcome what Dalton's weaknesses have been in prime time. And, Kansas City, I mean, they can't stop anybody. And I think Kansas City, might be a little worn out from last week. But they've got that speed on offense. Cincinnati, I think, will have put some pressure on, Kansas City's brilliant young quarterback. Probably more pressure than he got last week. So that's going to be a good, fun game to watch.
Yeah, they flexed the right game because entertainment-wise, that will be a great game to watch. You never know about Dalton because he has, like you said, he hasn't shown up in primetime games. Hank's plays that he really holds for his clients are at jimfeist.com. My plays as well, they're there. And Hank, I wish you a good week. Thank you very much for your time, your energy, and all your input to this. And all people out there listening, thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you again on Monday. Thanks, Hank. I appreciate it.
Okay, Jim, you want to see that series go 7, don't you?
You're damn right I do.
All right.
Take care.